We're here today with 3 positive parenting tips that will make your life a whole lot easier. Parenting can be tough, but this will help. We're going to share a powerful model with you first, and then we'll get to those 3 tips.
Hi, I'm Jenkins. I'm a speech-language pathologist.
And I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins, a clinical psychologist. We have both, through our entire career, worked with families and with children. There's a model that every parent needs to know. You can get a copy of this if you go to the URL that's on the screen right now, drpauljenkins.com/stages. Now, why does it say stages?
Okay, really, first you need to understand that there's a balance between control and maturity that helps us know how best to interact with our kids in order to get certain outcomes.
Right, so starting with control means control over your own life.
Right, and as you know, at the very beginning of a baby's life, they have very little control over their own life. The parent or another adult is responsible for feeding, taking care of, moving them around even.
Right, they can do very little for themselves, but as they gain maturity and get older, they take a little more control over their life.
Right.
You've probably already noticed this. You can see that age has something to do with it, but maturity is where it gets a little tricky. We all know that maturity has something to do with age, but there are other components. We all know older people who are not very mature.
And we know young children who are quite mature for their age.
Right, so what do we mean by that maturity? We've broken it into 3 stages, and you'll see this on the visual model that we promised to send you. Remember, drpauljenkins.com/stages so that you can get a copy of this printed out so that you can refer back to it. This becomes really important.
So stage 1, the first stage on our model, is when there's really not very much control in the child's life. It's mostly in the parent's life or the supportive adult in their life. And so this is a child who maybe is very young. Typically, we're talking, if you were going to match it with an age, we're talking a child who is not very in control of their emotions. They don't self-regulate, so there's a lot of tantrums. They might be maybe birth to 1 or 2 type age, that they really just want what they want right when they want it. They're not really concerned about anybody else. Just like a baby. A baby is hungry at 2 in the morning. They're going to cry and scream at 2 in the morning, whether you've had a rough night or need some sleep or anything, right? And so that's that whole idea that they don't have a lot of control because they don't have a lot of maturity. And they need somebody else to step in and have that control for them.
Now you can see that this is true of a toddler or a 2-year-old.
Right.
2-year-olds are really great at throwing tantrums.
Yeah. Especially at the grocery store.
But it's not just about age, because
No.
a 13-year-old can throw a doozy too. It's about stage, not age. So older kids who are being selfish, self-centered, demanding, manipulative, that's still stage 1.
Right.
So just think stage, not age. And when we move to stage 2, we stop fighting and start cooperating.
Right, and that's actually kind of the mark that we see. When a child is ready to cooperate, we know they've moved from stage 1 into stage 2. Now, I think it's really important to just mention really quick, cooperation doesn't always mean happily. But if they are, even if they're stomping their foot, fine, I'll go pick up my toys. They are cooperating. And so you're in stage 2.
That's how you can tell. It's the dividing line between stages 1 and 2. And then stage 3 is the most mature of all of the 3 stages on the graph, where there's responsibility and there's attention to morals and values and ethics. Basically, you're doing the right things for the right reason and even taking initiative.
Right, that's a really important part. Right.
Initiative, let's just address that really quickly because it means that you see what needs to be done and you do it. You know your kids are on stage 3 when you walk into the kitchen and someone has magically taken care of the dishes. Now, you might think, well, okay, that's la la land. But when kids reach a level of maturity that they can see what needs to be done and they just do it, taking their own initiative, that's what we're talking about in stage 3.
One of the reasons we want to help you understand that it's about stage and not age is that what stage your child is in at the moment dictates kind of what kind of a consequence you're going to set up, how you're going to interact with them. So if a child is in stage 1, you're going to interact with stage 1 consequences and interactions. If they're in 2, you go with that.
That's what we spend all of our time in our parent coaching programs talking about. And you can learn it very quickly. But this is why we said this model is something that all parents need to know. That determines how we're going to show up in the discipline. I think we need to acknowledge something else, though, as well. And if you've watched other videos here on our channel, you've probably heard this before. What's your job as a parent? You're chuckling because you know exactly what it is.
Yeah, it is to love them no matter what, and even if. I think sometimes we get really stuck in this, well, I need to make sure that they go to college, I need to make sure that they are kind, I need to make sure that they are good citizens. And any of those make sure that they's aren't really your main job. Your real job is to love your child no matter what and even if.
When you grasp that, everything else just becomes logistics. And we can help you with the discipline part. You've got to really understand that your job is to love them, no matter what and even if. Everything else is secondary to that. We're going to share those 3 positive parenting tips with you next. Before we get to that, take a moment to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss anything that's coming your way to support you as a parent.
So tip number 1 is to push pause, meaning that sometimes we need to just slow down as a parent and kind of observe and wonder. I think this is great on a day-to-day basis, and also sometimes even within our discipline. Just push pause for a minute, slow down, and take just a little break to make sure that you're watching and observing and really getting a feel for what's going on.
Children don't keep. We don't even have any kids anymore. They all grew
Little
up.
ones,
They're all adults. Now we have grandkids in our home. We're at a stage in our life where we really are sensitive to this. Your kids are there temporarily, and your little kids don't keep. And your babies don't keep. They turn into bigger kids and older kids and teenagers. And every stage has some really fascinating and engaging things that if you were to just push pause and enjoy it in the moment, you're going to have a whole lot better experience as a parent. Tip number 2 leads right in from that. Find the fun.
I remember, there are so many things that are great if you just take a little bit of time to look at what's fun. One time I remember one of our little guys had this big sunshine that he'd made up in a Sunday school class or something, and he ripped it and he'd thrown it all over the house. And I remember you made some comments like, oh gosh, he's just throwing that paper all over. And I said, no, he's scattering sunshine. You can take a minute to find the fun.
I remember another example too. A songwriter, Michael McLean, that we followed a little bit, had a song about doing just this, finding the fun. And one of the examples was a mother who was unloading the groceries from the back of the car, and the pie that she had bought at the store for the family dinner fell on the driveway. And she went into the house, and the kids are all just kind of frozen in time, waiting and anticipating the explosion from this little accident that occurred. But mom came back out of the house with forks. And they all sat down on the driveway and just ate the pie right off of the driveway. Find the fun. These moments are to be treasured and enjoyed, and you can do that by choice.
And sometimes just to get yourself in that mode, sometimes you can just start with the saying, what I like about this stage or what I like about this time of our life is, and it just gives you a chance to kind of springboard your mind into that finding fun mode.
You're asking your mind to look for it, and it will find it.
So tip number 3 is to send smiles.
It's appropriate that this follows find fun.
Right.
Life is to be enjoyed, not just endured. And sometimes we get into that trap as parents. Watch your face. Check your face. Check your eyebrows. Check the position, the expression that you have, and just kind of see where it is. A lot of people don't realize that they carry kind of a grumpy, hard face.
It actually reminds me of a time we were in the car. I can't remember exactly where we're going, but I was upset with one of my boys, and he was in the back seat in his car seat. And anyway, I was driving along, and I looked up in the mirror, and I had the eyebrows going.
Brow.
But I was thinking, I'm just going to stay mad a little bit longer, then I'll talk to him. And I was just mad, right? And then I decided I was done being mad, and I was going to send a smile his way. And I looked up and he had fallen asleep. And I kind of missed my moment. And I realized that I carried that kind of, that angry mom eyebrow thing much longer and much more often than I wanted to. And so I kind of tried to find a way to just check my face and make sure that it's a little bit more relaxed, it's smile. Maybe my stance isn't so tight or folded arms, just kind of take a moment and send a smile.
One of our viewers actually tried this. Tecumseh, if you're watching this video, you'll remember this, an experiment with her children where she just intentionally chose to send a smile on a regular basis over a period of 3 or 4 days, and it freaked her kids out. They weren't even sure what she was up to. I've often said when mom is smiling, kids are thinking. And so it can work for you strategically as well.
And let me just add one other kind of a bonus tip right here as a mom. I feel like along with that sending a smile is get to yes as often as possible. So much a part of the role that we play as parents is protecting our kids. And so there's a lot of no's involved. And so anytime you can get to a yes, do it. It really builds that relationship with your children and helps you enjoy them, and they are more willing to work with you.
A little tip that'll help with that, you can always say yes if or yes when, at least in your own mind, and that'll help you to get to yes a little more quickly. And you're going to have such a better experience as a parent if you can apply these 3 tips. I hope you found this helpful. Seriously, go get the model. This model is one that every parent needs to know. drpauljenkins.com/stages, and you can have a copy of this right in your inbox.